I stepped out of the taxi, breathing in the crisp autumn air as I approached my home. It was meant to be a surprise visit. I'd returned from my business trip a day early, eager to reunite with my husband Theo and our little boy Nathan. But the muffled voices filtering through the half-open window gave me pause. "Only way we can secure those properties," came Theo's agitated whisper. "Once they're in my name, that wretched woman will have no claim over them." My heart sank as the realization washed over me. I tiptoed closer, peering through the gap in the curtains. Theo sat hunched over the coffee table, his mother Meredith beside him. Her cold, beady eyes gleamed with malice as she said, "I've been trying to tell you, Theo. That girl was after your family's wealth from the start. She needs to be cut off once and for all." Anger and disbelief churned within me. How could the man I loved conspire against me with his vile mother? I fought back tears, clenching my fists to keep from bursting through the door. Meredith leaned closer, her voice dripping with disdain. "We have to act fast before she gets wind of our plan. That brat of hers can't be allowed to inherit anything either." The casual dismissal of my son, our son, was the final straw. I stormed inside, slamming the door behind me. "You wicked, deceitful snakes," I snarled, glaring at their startled faces. "How dare you plot against me?" "Against your own family." Theo's eyes widened in panic, while Meredith's twisted into a sneer. Well, if it isn't the little gold-digger herself," she spat. "We were just discussing how to save the family from your greedy clutches." I stared at Theo in disbelief, searching for any hint of remorse or denial on his face, but his expression hardened as he rose from the couch, squaring his shoulders. "You've had this coming for a long time, Alara," he sneered. "Always putting your work before your family, neglecting us for those stupid business trips. I'm done making excuses for you." Meredith chimed in, her shrill voice grating on my ears. "He's right. You're a terrible mother, unfit to raise little Nathan. It's a miracle the poor boy has turned out halfway decent, despite your constant absence." "How dare you?" I cried, rounding on the vile woman. "I've worked hard to provide for this family, to give my son a good life, and this is how you repay me?" Theo stepped between us, his eyes cold and unfamiliar. "Save your breath. I want a divorce, Alara, and I'm taking Nathan with me." The words hit me like a physical blow. I staggered back, clutching the wall for support. "You can't do this," I pleaded, desperate tears streaking my face. "Nathan is my whole world. Please, Theo, don't take him from me." "Watch me," he snarled. "Once the lawyers get involved, you'll see how little say you have in this. I'll make sure you're painted as the negligent, career-obsessed mother who abandoned her child." Meredith cackled, a sound like nails on a chalkboard. "He's not wrong, A woman of your background can hardly be trusted with a young boy's upbringing. In our family, we value tradition, decency." "Shut your vicious mouth," I exploded, whirling on the twisted old hag. "You've never accepted me, have you? Just because I didn't come from wealth and decency, like you pretend to have." Her eyes glinted with malice. "That's precisely why, you uppity little tramp. You're a stain on our family's good name, marrying into money you could never earn yourself." Theo's face was impassive as stone. "I've made up my mind, Alara. The papers will be filed first thing tomorrow. If you know what's good for you, you'll go quietly and let me have full custody." I opened my mouth, 1,000 protests on my lips, but the resolution in his eyes stopped me cold. This was a man I no longer recognized, an empty husk manipulated by his domineering mother. So I turned and fled, choking back sobs as I stumbled from the house. Theo and Meredith's triumphant laughter echoed in my ears, fueling a simmering rage that would soon erupt into an inferno. Once the initial shock wore off, a cold determination set in. I wouldn't let Theo and that wretched mother of his take everything from me without a fight. First step was securing my assets. I dug out the documents for the rental properties I'd inherited from my uncle, poring over every line to ensure they were airtight. Theo may have thought he could bleed me dry through this divorce, but those houses were purchased with my own family's money. He had no legal claim. Next, I sought out Mr. Castile, one of the sharpest divorce lawyers in town. His steely gaze appraised me as I laid out the situation, pulling no punches about Theo's betrayal and Meredith's toxic involvement. "They're grasping at straws to paint you as an unfit parent," Castile said gruffly. But with careful documentation, we can dismantle that narrative piece by piece. I nodded, a lump in my throat. I can't lose Nathan. He's my entire world. Then we'd better get to work. Castile handed me a sheaf of documents. Start keeping a meticulous log. Anytime Theo is negligent or Meredith undermines you, write it down with dates and details. We'll build an insurmountable case. For weeks, I followed his advice to the letter while Theo pointedly avoided me. I chronicled every instance of his shortcomings as a father, from forgotten pickups to broken promises. I made backups of bank records showing the financial support I provided. Any nasty remarks from Meredith went into the files, proof of her poisonous influence. When I finally felt prepared, I stormed into Castile's office and slapped the overflowing binder on his desk. Here it is, everything you'll need to decimate them in court. He flipped through the pages, a faint smile playing across his weathered face. Impressive work. With documentation like this, their case won't stand a chance. We'll counter by questioning Theo's fitness as a parent and calling out Meredith's manipulation. A steely glint entered his eyes. I also noticed some irregularities in the financial records you provided. Seems your husband has been living rather large on joint assets. Something protective uncurled in my chest as I met his gaze. Do whatever you have to. I won't let them take my son from me. Revenge would be mine, through the pure, ruthless force of truth itself. Let the Bensons try to slander me with their lies. This time, they would have no shadows to hide in. With my arsenal prepared, it was time to lure Theo and Meredith out into the open. I knew they were getting antsy, scrambling to make their move before I outmaneuvered them, so I decided to give them a little push. The next time Theo came to pick up Nathan for his court-approved visitation, I was waiting with a sly smile. You know, it's funny, I remarked as Nathan ran to hug his father. I was just going over the finances with my lawyer the other day. Theo stiffened, eyes narrowing. What about them? Oh, nothing much. I waved a nonchalant hand. Just noticed some discrepancies, shall we say? Quite a few luxury purchases that don't really seem in line with a normal budget. His cheeks flushed, but he schooled his expression into a sneer. If you're insinuating something, Alara, I'd watch myself. Any accusations of misspent funds will just make you look desperate when the custody case goes to court. Really? I arched an eyebrow. Because way I see it, a man willing to embezzle from his own household might not be the most responsible caretaker for a young child. Theo opened his mouth, rage contorting his features, but Nathan tugged on his sleeve. Dad, can we go to the park now like you promised? Of course, son. He forced a smile, shooting me one last venomous look before ushering Nathan out the door. Over the next few days, Theo avoided me like the plague, but I could see the worry lingering in his furtive glances, the tension in his shoulders. Good, let the rat sweat for a while. Eventually, Meredith came slinking by in another of her tack suits, lips pursed like she'd been sucking on a lemon. I don't know what lies you've been filling my son's head with, she hissed, but it ends here and now. I leveled her with a cool stare. Believe me, I've got enough truth on my side to bury you both 6 feet deep. But by all means, keep pushing me. My smile didn't reach my eyes. It'll make taking you down even sweeter. Meredith sputtered uselessly for a moment before turning on her heel and storming off. But the very next day, vicious whispers began circulating about me around town and at my office. Rumors of neglect, infidelity, untrustworthiness. The Bensons were lashing out in a panic. Well, if they wanted to get dirty, I was game. With my documents ready, I strode into Castile's office, shoulders squared for battle. Hit them where it hurts, Mr. Castile. It's time to go nuclear. True to his word, Castile didn't pull any punches when he filed the divorce papers. Every shred of evidence I'd gathered over the weeks, Theo's negligence as a father, his financial improprieties, Meredith's toxic meddling, was laid bare in an airtight case for full custody of Nathan and protection of my assets. Theo must have soiled himself when he saw the stack of documentation. His face turned an ugly puce as the lawyer read out the list of charges: misuse of joint funds, emotional manipulation, attempted fraud. By the time Meredith had blubbered through her indignant objections, I could see the situation dawning on them both. Their scheme was unraveling at the seams. You vindictive little snake, Theo snarled as we left the courthouse, straightening his rumpled suit. Did you really think you could take me for everything I'm worth? I'm just taking back what's rightfully mine, I replied coolly, which is more than you and your mommy dearest ever deserved. Meredith puffed up like an irate hen, lips pulled into an ugly sneer. You'll regret this, Alara. We'll make sure everybody knows what a deceitful, unfit mother you really are. A humorless chuckle slipped from my lips. You mean like how the whole town already knows about your underhanded money grabs and relentless meddling? I shook my head slowly. I'm not the one with a reputation in tatters, Mary. For once, she seemed to have no retort, flushing an uglier shade of rage. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go pick up my son, the one I'll hopefully regain full custody of once your shady dealings are brought to light. I turned on my heel and marched away, back straight with confidence. In the following weeks, the court proceedings turned into a three-ring circus, with the Bensons as the tragic clowns at the center. Each new document, each scathing testimony about their deplorable behavior, chipped away at their credibility bit by bit. By the time Mr. Castile had thoroughly eviscerated Theo's case under a mountain of proof, even the judge looked vaguely embarrassed for them. When the final ruling came down, full custody awarded to me, in addition to sole ownership of my inherited properties, I could barely contain the vindicated grin that split my face. Meredith's enraged shriek echoed through the chamber as she had to be physically restrained. At long last, that wretched family was getting the public humiliation they deserved, and I would be damned if I ever let them slither back into mine and Nathan's lives again. The courthouse erupted into chaos after the judge's ruling. Theo and Meredith were apoplectic, shouting vile insults and accusations until the bailiffs had to forcibly remove them. I simply stood my ground, holding Nathan's hand tightly as we watched their embarrassing spectacle unfold. Don't worry, sweetie, I murmured as Meredith screeched about her disgraced family name. That awful woman can never hurt us again. Nathan looked up at me with trusting eyes. I'm just glad you're my mom. In that moment, all the stress and heartache felt worth it. My son was safely back in my arms where he belonged. Theo and his viper of a mother had been thoroughly discredited by the surfacing of their vindictive schemes, but the media circus was only just beginning. The sordid details of the case, once sealed by the court, were now open knowledge thanks to some well-timed leaks on Mr. Castile's part. Within days, our small town was awash with tales of Theo's reckless spending, Meredith's lifelong habit of manipulating her wealthy relatives, and the despicable way they'd tried to strip me of everything. Self-righteous friends of the Bensons quickly distanced themselves, appalled by the revelations. I took petty satisfaction in watching the dramatic social downfall of the family that had tried so viciously to destroy me. Meredith's charity committee kicked her out on her screeching, blue rinse head. Theo lost his cushy banking job after clients pulled their funds in disgust. At the grocery store, I couldn't help but smirk as I overheard the latest gossip. Robbed his own wife blind. And after she'd been working tirelessly to support their household. It seemed the court of public opinion had handed down its own ruling, a fate worse than any legal ramifications for the Bensons. Social pariah status in a community that once ranked high society as the ultimate currency. Of course, Meredith still stubbornly clung to her delusions of aristocracy, bombing my phone with chunky paragraphs of block capitalized threats and demands. I simply laughed them off, savoring the mental image of her garish, lipstick-smeared scowl with each unhinged message. With their credibility in tatters, the Bensons' empty posturing bounced right off of me. I had everything I truly valued, my son, my financial stability, and the overwhelming relief of extracting those toxic leeches from my life once and for all. When the dust finally settled, I could turn my focus to creating the fresh start Nathan and I so dearly needed. Our bright new future was just beginning. In the aftermath of my legal victory over Theo and Meredith, life finally started returning to normal. Well, as normal as it could be without those two toxic presences lurking about. I'd worried that Nathan might face backlash at school from residual gossip, but his little circle of friends didn't seem to pay the drama much mind. Kids can be blessedly oblivious sometimes. As for the parents' cliques, their judgment fell squarely on the Bensons after the truth about their schemes came out. I always knew there was something off about that Meredith woman, I overheard one mom sniff at the pickup line. Smile plastered on like a TV saleswoman, but a real snake just waiting to strike. I smothered a laugh at the visual. Truer words were never spoken about that bottomless well of fake niceties and poison. Speaking of the devil's bride herself, Meredith's unhinged tantrums only escalated after the custody ruling. She left messages on my phone daily, shrieking about her disgrace and making baseless threats of further legal action. I simply deleted them unheard. Her words held no power over me anymore. Theo, for his part, seemed to have accepted his humiliation with marginally more dignity. We crossed paths exactly once in the weeks after the case, him looking haggard and rumpled outside the bank where he'd just been fired. "I hope you're happy now, Alara," he spat, venom lacing his tone. "You've taken everything from me." I stared back, unflinching. "No, Theo, I just took back what was rightfully mine. The rest?" A tiny smirk played over my lips. "That was all you're doing?" As I turned and walked away, I could have sworn I glimpsed something like shame flash across his features. Good. Maybe somewhere under that selfish exterior, he realized how badly he'd mistreated his family. Served him right to lose everything over his greed. The once prominent Benson name was now a laughingstock thanks to his petulant drive for control and Meredith's obsessive need to hoard wealth. I almost pitied the karmic freefall their reputation had taken. Almost. In the end, those two reprehensible people had dug their own graves through depravity and deception. All I had done was streamline their journey to the filthy pits they'd long belonged in. If giving my son a peaceful, stable life was considered unforgivable in their eyes, then I would wear that unrepentant badge with pride. Because as I watched Nathan bounding across the park, carefree giggles filling the air, I knew our future held nothing but potential. We were finally free. With Theo and Meredith firmly in the rear view, Nathan and I could finally start fresh. I decided to move us into one of the rental properties I now had full ownership of, a cozy 3-bedroom not too far from his school. The first night there, we ordered pizza and watched movies, bundled up on the living room floor. Nathan's face lit up with an unburdened smile I realized I hadn't seen in ages. "I'm so glad it's just us now, Mom," he said through a mouthful of pepperoni. "No more yelling or people being mean to you." I pulled him into a tight hug, blinking back grateful tears. "Me too, sweetheart. Just us against the world from now on." Those words would become our new family motto over the following months as we settled into our fresh start. I relished the simplicity of our little routines, making pancakes on Saturdays, playing catch in the backyard, reading bedtime stories without that thunderous cloud of tension looming. The vindictive threats from Meredith had finally petered out into blessed silence. I didn't know or care what sad holes she and Theo had slunk off to lick their wounds. All I cared about was giving my son the stable, drama-free life he deserved. With that renewed perspective came a startling realization. I didn't need to pour every waking hour into my corporate marketing career anymore. Being there for Nathan, nurturing his growth into a caring, ethical young man, was my true life's work now. So after discussing it with him, I transitioned into working as a freelance consultant from home. The pay cut was tough, but worth it to have that flexibility. I even started teaching online courses in my spare time, exploring new avenues to share my professional skills. And in that newfound balance, a kernel of an idea took shape. A way to pay forward the strength I'd found in overcoming Theo and Meredith's treachery. I started small, just a local support group for women facing struggles with toxic families or domestic conflicts. But as word spread about my own story of resilience, the group quickly bloomed into a full-fledged nonprofit organization. My own hard-won wisdom became a beacon of hope and resources for so many others trapped in those same crushing cycles of manipulation and abuse. Organizing fundraisers, coordinating legal aid, providing that steady voice of reassurance, it all filled a void I hadn't realized was there. This was the legacy I wanted of Nathan, the example of an unbreakable woman who took control of her own destiny and used her past suffering to uplift others, still sadly stuck in theirs. As I looked around the packed community center at the nonprofit's first huge event, heart swelling with pride, I realized our lives were finally beautifully, unequivocally our own. and nothing, no one, would ever take that away again.